Thanks for joining us today. I'm Gabe Garish, owner of Backwoods Pursuit, and today we're doing a Yeti cooler review. This is the Yeti Tundra 75, and it was a part of our huge 16 cooler review where we tested for a lot of data points, but particularly to find the best roto-molded cooler, and within that, which was the best roto-molded cooler as far as thermal retention, and which one kept that air temperature inside the cooler below 40 degrees Fahrenheit for the longest period of time. A link to that review is in the description, so you can check it out there. There's a ton of data in that review, way more than we can go over in this video, so definitely go check that out. But I'll put a link to that there, as well as a link to our website, backwoodspursuit.com, and Instagram and Facebook pages, and a link to this Yeti Tundra cooler so you can check it out for yourself. Let's get started. Alright, to get started, let's take a look at some of the specs and details of Yeti coolers here before we get into the performance data as far as how it did in that big review. This again is the Yeti Tundra 75, and what we did first is went ahead and measured the actual internal volume of every single cooler in that review. This being the Yeti Tundra 75, the actual internal volume as we measured it, we filled these with water, then emptied all the water out and measured that water to see how much water each cooler would hold. The Yeti Tundra 75 here held 73.2 quarts of water, so slightly smaller than the advertised 75 quarts, but not too terribly bad. So very close to that advertised volume, but it was a little bit smaller in our test. Now as far as weight, the weight of this Tundra 75 came in at 34 pounds, and that was actually a little bit below the average for a 75 quart class type of cooler. So it is a little bit lighter, and as you can see, a little bit more slim than some of the others. Some were quite bulky, like the Pelicans are fairly bulky, and the Bison was a little bit more bulky. But the Yeti here is quite a bit more slim and offers you a lot of thermal retention in a fairly compact package and a fairly lightweight package relative to some of the others in the competition. So that is a very nice thing about the Yeti coolers. They do really, really well in their thermal retention, but also aren't super bulky and super heavy, so a great combination there. Now, one of the other factors we took into account in the review here to find a value of these coolers is the actual cost per quart based on that true internal volume that we measured. So the actual cost per quart of this Yeti Tundra 75 came in at a value of $6.15 per quart. So it was on the higher end compared to some of the competition out there, but it certainly wasn't the highest either. So it was surprisingly wasn't the most expensive. I kind of expected it to be, but based on that actual internal volume and the average across all of the other competitors in that review, it was on the higher end, but would certainly not the most expensive. So it was nice, but you are paying for obviously a premium cooler here, and you kind of expect that in Yeti. So that was one of the factors that we looked at in the review as well. Now, as far as some of the physical features, you've got nice rubber latches here. They give you a nice positive latch right there, where some of the ones that we tested weren't quite so much so. They're not going to fall off or come off of their latch just by bumping them or hitting them. Some of them were like that, so it was nice that Yeti is not. So they do take a nice firm pull to get that to latch or to unlatch, whichever way you're going there. And it does come with a nice basket on the inside as well, so that's another feature that is great about the Yetis. Now, like most of them, you've got a rope and a handle here, and then you also have a handle on the underneath side here, so you can carry it either way. And Yeti comes with one drain plug here, and it's not tethered. I do wish it was tethered. It's easy to pull that drain plug out when you're getting ready to leave camp and set it on a rock or whatnot and forget it, and then leave your drain plug, and then you have to get another replacement or whatnot. And it is fluted as well, so you don't necessarily need to take that drain plug all the way out, so you can just open it, loosen it, and it will start to drain the water. But it would be nice if that was tethered, and I do wish there was a second drain plug. A lot of the coolers we tested do have two drain plugs, and or they are much larger than this. So your drain plug is going to be a little bit slower than some of the others, but it still wasn't too bad, but it is on the smaller side. Now, one thing that is really nice about Yeti coolers is that they are certified bear resistant by the Interagency Grizzly Bear Committee, and you have padlocks here and on that corner as well, so you want to go ahead and padlock that if you are camping in bear country. But they are certified there, so if you are camping there, you can rest assured that you're going to meet those requirements if it's an area that requires a bear resistant container. Now, it comes with a 5-year warranty. Not the best in the review. Some of the coolers in that review had lifetime warranties, and some of them had as little as a 1-year warranty. So kind of right in the middle, but it is a solid warranty, and it is obviously a quality product, as you know, from Yeti coolers. So not the best warranty, but certainly not the worst either. All right, now for the performance. How did it do in that big cooler test? The way we set that test up is we took all 16 coolers and put them in a canvas tent that had a nice white ceiling on it, so it evenly dispersed all of the sun, so no one cooler or no one side of the tent was really hit with a more intense sunlight than the other. It really was a nice diffusing canopy over that tent and evenly dispersed all the heat. We tracked the temperature 4 times a day, morning, noon, evening, and then later in the evening, and opened the coolers 4 times throughout the day and tracked the internal air temperature of each and every cooler. And to prepare for that, we did chill every single cooler the night before, so they were all chilled and started out cold, and then we filled every cooler in a 2-to-1 ratio of ice to water bottles. And that ratio was determined based on the true internal measured volume of these coolers. So every cooler had approximately 80% of its internal volume filled with a 2-to-1 ratio of ice to water bottles. So that made the test very, very even across the entire board of all of the coolers that we tested to make sure that we were doing as good a job as we could to come up with an even result as far as the way that we did that testing. So that's how we set that up. And the testing throughout the day, measuring those temperatures throughout each and every day, 4 times a day, simulated a camping scenario where you aren't just going to leave a cooler closed for an entire camping trip. That's just not realistic. 4 times a day in all reality is not realistic either, in the sense of you're going to be in a cooler most likely a lot more than that, but at least gave us those 4 checkpoints and gave us something equal across the board for all of the coolers. And we did open it and present and introduce that warm air from opening the cooler, so it did require more from the coolers. Now, if you're opening it, say, 30 times a day, you can expect obviously much worse performance than what we got in our test. So take that into account. But the results that we had, this Yeti 75 in its size class here, and we broke the results down into top to bottom as well as a size class. So within its size class, it ranked and tied for the top spot in its thermal retention of keeping that internal air temperature below 40 degrees. We really wanted to look at that 40-degree temperature because that is the safe storage temperature for meat and is what is really important if you are camping and have meat stored in your cooler. So we wanted to see how long these coolers would keep that air temperature below 40 degrees. The Yeti Tundra 75 did so for 7 days, held that internal air temperature below 40 degrees, and that's again opening them 4 times a day. Temperatures inside that tent during the test got up to 100 degrees on multiple occasions, and it just gave it a really good test to see how well it was going to do in that environment of hot temperatures, but not in direct sunlight. That's ideal even when you're camping. So 7 days below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The other interesting data point is that some of the coolers did, some of the coolers didn't keep that internal air temperature below 40 degrees while there was ice in the cooler. And this was one that did that. So the temperature in the cooler did not rise above 40 degrees until all the ice was melted. That's important in that, again, if you have meat in the cooler and you open the cooler up and there is still ice in the cooler, you can know that this is likely going to be below the 40-degree temperature and safe for storing meat. Whereas some coolers hit that 40-degree mark with ice still in the cooler and then stayed for another 1, 2, or 3 days with ice in the cooler, but they were pushing closer to 50 degrees, which is getting into a danger zone when you're storing meat. So that was something that was very impressive about the Yeti coolers, and they did a really, really good job in our test at thermal retention. Now, in the overall rankings, it came in at the number 6 spot, and the only ones that did better than the Yeti Tundra 75 were the larger coolers. Overall in our test, we found that larger coolers tended to do a little bit better, so that's not surprising, but again, in its size category, it tied for that top spot with the Pelican 80. Now, as far as one other interesting data point, the internal temperature, the average internal temperature was really, really low, was among the best, only, again, beat by the Pelican 80 quart as far as average internal temperature. For that 7 days that stayed below 40 degrees, it held an average internal temperature of 35.9 degrees. So an awesome internal temperature throughout that entire 7 days. Really, really impressive. It was, again, right there on the tied with the top spot for that its size category that it was in. All right, now some of the pros and cons that we came away with after testing this Yeti Tundra 75. First and foremost, it just did awesome in our thermal retention testing, which is really what you want in a cooler. That's why you're buying a premium roto-molded cooler like this, to keep your goods cold for a long period of time, and it does exactly that. And it does that in a slim package that isn't super bulky and isn't overly heavy for what they are. Roto-molded coolers are heavy by nature, but it's not too bad for its size as far as the weight, and the size is fairly slim and compact for a 75 quart cooler. So we really like that. We like the latch system as well. It's not overly difficult. Like the one that we tested was that Orca, and it has an even more positive latch here when you pull down on this. This one is kind of in between that and the Arctic, which was a little too loose in our opinion. This is kind of a good balance between tight enough to where it's not going to pop loose on you, but not so tight that it's difficult to get into. So we liked the latch system there, and then also liked that it came with a dry basket as a part of it. Not all the coolers did that. That's really nice as well, that you get with the Yeti cooler. Now, as you expect, they're very well made, and they are certified to bear resistant, which can be a critical point if you are camping in bear country where that's a requirement. So keep that in mind. Now, a couple things we didn't love about this. Obviously, the price point is on the higher side. You kind of expect that with the Yeti, but it is certainly that. I didn't love that it doesn't have 2 drain plugs, or that this drain plug is on the small side. To me, it would be an improvement if you had the 2 drain plugs and they were a little bit bigger, but not a deal breaker, but just something that felt like could have been a little bit better. Now, it would be nice if the Yeti coolers gave you a lifetime warranty. There were a number of other coolers that were USA made, and even some that weren't. They gave you that lifetime warranty. Not that a 5-year warranty is bad by any stretch, but it would be nice to have that longer warranty period. And finally, the size of the internal volume was slightly smaller than the advertised volume, at just over 73 quarts versus the 75 quart advertised volume. So it's a little bit smaller than advertised, and certainly nothing egregious by any stretch, but not quite the size that that 75 quart indicates. So a couple of things we didn't love, but overall, definitely one of our favorite coolers. It performed phenomenally. Thermal retention was incredible. Grizzly bear resistant. It's really, really well built, and just something that you can know is going to last a long, long time. Keep your food and beverage cold for a long period of time. Tied first in class in its size category, so love that about the Yeti Tundra. Drop any questions or comments for us. Love to help you out if we can. I'll put a link to the Yeti Tundra down in the description so you can check it out for yourself. Thanks for watching here today, and we will see you next time.